We all think we know the story of the first Christmas, right? It's this peaceful, really familiar scene. But, behind that traditional image, there's a much more complex and, honestly, a way more fascinating historical reality. So let's dive in and try to separate the storybook from the history books.
So, this is the big question for us today. If we strip away all the centuries of tradition, the art, the Christmas carols we all know and love, what does the historical record actually tell us about what happened around the birth of Jesus?
You can picture it in your head right now, can't you? A silent night, a humble little stable, animals looking on, shepherds, and these incredibly dressed wise men all showing up to see this newborn. It's an image of just profound peace.
But history gives us a totally different backdrop. The story doesn't really begin in peaceful silence. It starts in a period of really high tension. Judea was a province just simmering under Roman rule, a place full of political unrest and, to be honest, desperate hope.
To really get the story, you first have to understand the world it happened in. So let's set the stage and take a look at the political climate of the time.
Okay, this timeline is where things get really interesting, because it totally reframes the story. See, Roman power had been a reality there for decades. By 37 BCE, they installed this guy, Herod the Great, as a client king. He was known for being both a brilliant builder and absolutely ruthless. And look at that window for Jesus' birth. It's right at the very end of Herod's violent reign, just before he dies in 4 BCE. This is not a peaceful time. It's the chaotic end of an era.
And living under this kind of foreign rule, it fueled this incredibly powerful hope. A lot of Jewish people were waiting for a Messiah, a prophesied savior who they believed would finally free them from the Romans and bring back their nation's glory. This idea, this expectation, it was in the very air they breathed.
So with all that political stuff in mind, let's switch gears. How do historians even try to figure out when this all happened? Well, it takes a little bit of historical detective work. The single most important clue historians have is this date, around 4 BCE. See, the biblical accounts are very clear that Jesus was born during the reign of King Herod. And we know from other historical records that Herod died in 4 BCE, so that means the birth had to have happened sometime right before that. It's our best historical anchor.
And right here, this is where you see that huge split between history and tradition. The historical evidence points to a window somewhere between 6 and 4 BCE. The date we all celebrate, December 25th, that wasn't actually set until centuries later, and it was probably chosen to line up with existing Roman winter festivals like Saturnalia.
Now, when it comes to the Nativity story itself, our main sources are 2 books in the New Testament. But what's so fascinating is they don't tell the exact same story. They actually give us 2 very unique, very different perspectives.
First up, you've got the Gospel of Matthew. The best way to think about this version is like a royal drama. It's jam-packed with kings, political intrigue, and threats to power. The whole thing feels like it's seen through the eyes of Joseph.
So in Matthew's telling, you get these mysterious Magi, these wise men from the East, who show up looking for a newborn king. Of course, this news absolutely terrifies the current king, Herod. He launches this paranoid plot, which leads to a horrific massacre, and forces the family to flee to Egypt as political refugees. It's a story all about danger and prophecy. But then you turn to the Gospel of Luke, and it tells a very different kind of story. This isn't a royal drama at all. It's a humble journey. It's focused on ordinary people, and seems to be told mostly from Mary's point of view.
In Luke's version, the whole thing gets started because of a Roman census. A bureaucratic decree. This forces a young couple to travel while she's pregnant, and because of just a logistical problem, no room at the inn, their baby ends up being born in an animal trough. And the first visitors? They aren't foreign dignitaries, they're local working-class shepherds. It's a story about humility and finding grace in really ordinary circumstances. When you put it all side by side like this, the contrasts just jump out at you. Joseph's perspective versus Mary's. Visitors who are Gentiles, meaning non-Jews, versus visitors who are Jewish shepherds. A major political threat versus a simple logistical problem. Now, historians don't really see these as contradictions. They think it just reflects 2 different authors writing for 2 different audiences. And what's really cool is that our modern nativity scene, the one we all know, with both the shepherds and the wise men, is a beautiful blend, a combination of these 2 very distinct accounts.
So you might be wondering, with all these historical complexities and 2 different versions of the story, why has this narrative become one of the most enduring in all of human history?
Well, the answer really is in its powerful symbolism.
Every single one of these details is just loaded with meaning. The birth in Bethlehem, that connects Jesus to the family line of Israel's greatest king, King David. Having both Magi and shepherds show up, that suggests the message is for everyone, insiders and outsiders. The flight to Egypt is a direct echo of the story of Moses. And of course, the humble birth itself becomes the perfect starting point for a life spent teaching about compassion and humility.
And ultimately, this is probably the best way to look at the Nativity accounts. They aren't just simple history reports. They're this incredible blend of historical memory. We're talking real people, real places, a real political situation, and theological interpretation, all of it crafted to tell a story with a very deep spiritual meaning.
And so, that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Knowing that the first Christmas didn't happen on some silent, peaceful night, but instead went down against this backdrop of political tension, imperial rule, and this deep, desperate longing for change, how does knowing that context reshape how we understand this 2,000-year-old story today?